my talk tonight is about self-talk. But before I went into it, I thought I might share a bit of a story. So 2 years ago, I was in Taiwan doing missions, and Jerry, at the time, he visited me with his younger brother, Alan. So we all went to the zoo. It was very fun. And then while we were there, we were like walking somewhere, and then we overheard this conversation between a young couple. And we hear the wife, ask her husband, "Oh, where's the lid?" to something. And he replied, "Oh, I threw it away." She said something to the effect of, "You idiot, why did you do that?" And then proceeded to swear at him very loudly. And I just remember at that time being really taken aback. You do that in public? It was just very shocking. If we think about it, we all know that it's wrong to talk to people like that, with that kind of criticism and that tone and that public kind of humiliation. And if someone is constantly talked to in that way, it will destroy their confidence and their self-esteem. But do we talk to ourselves that way? If we make a mistake, is that the way that we talk to ourselves? Because how we treat ourselves is just as important as how we treat others. And we've all heard the phrase that I'm my worst enemy, and that begins in the mind. So what are you telling yourself? Is your self-talk encouraging and empowering you, or is it harming you and holding you back? And how do you recognize it and change it? So first I want to talk a little bit about what self-talk means and why it's important. We've talked about assumptions and misbeliefs and lies, and they're basically the same thing. They're the core belief that is wrong, that we have in our subconscious that sometimes we don't even know, most of the time, we don't know that we have. And they are the lies that lead to our harmful self-talk. And so one of the ways to figure out what the lies that we actually believe in our subconscious is to trace our self-talk, right? So we've talked about self-talk in the journaling process, and I think that is one of the best ways to kind of explain what that is. So for those of you who don't know, I'll just go really quickly through the journaling process. Basically, it's the process that helps us understand our emotions, understand, first of all, why we feel what we feel, and then the second part of that is then how to get ourselves out of that. So, for example, it starts with how we're feeling, right? So, for example, I could be feeling anxious or I'm feeling scared. So the self-talk part is what we're saying to ourselves that is making us feel anxious or scared. So it could be, "Oh, I shouldn't have done that. I shouldn't have said that. Now what are they going to think of me?" Or do they think I'm competent in what I'm doing? The next step is the underlying lie, right? The assumption or the misbelief. So that could be, my worth is in the approval of others, or my worth is based on my performance. And then the part of the journaling process that helps us get out of that is then we look at how God views that situation. So, actually, God is the one who determines my worth. And my worth is worth the life of Jesus. He died on the cross. He paid for me. And then the next step is about truth coaches, which Nathan mentioned. So that's the journaling process and how self-talk fits into that. And you might be thinking, well, then doesn't it make more sense to kind of target and change the underlying lie that I have that will then change my self-talk? And I would say it's actually not one or the other. You can work on both at the same time. The reason being, deep-rooted lies, they're in our subconscious. So often our self-talk doesn't actually say, "Oh, my worth is in the approval of others," or "My worth is in my performance." The things that we can actually think about is our self-talk. The lie is in our subconscious, and our self-talk is the thing that can help trace and help us to find what that lie is. And it is an indicator actually also when we encounter different situations to figure out what lies that we're still struggling with. And last week, Jerry talked about self-esteem, and he used the example of how yeah, we know it's wrong to verbally abuse someone or like constantly criticize them. So why do we do it to ourselves? To what extent are we building ourselves up or tearing ourselves down? We need to learn how to encourage ourselves realistically. So we don't want to puff ourselves up with lies, but we don't want to beat ourselves down with them either. And lastly, why I think also self-talk is really important is when you are in a crisis situation where your bruises have been stepped on, I found personally that truth coaches in that moment aren't super helpful. It doesn't take away that they're true, but in that moment I found that actually when I'm trying to comfort someone or just sit with someone who is dealing with a unbearable feeling, when I simply tell them truth coaches, often they can actually feel invalidated in the sense that, like, oh, you're telling me this stuff, so I should just be okay. I can't feel angry or I can't feel, So whatever that person is feeling has to be acknowledged and sat with. And then it's actually your self-talk that will calm yourself down, not necessarily the truth coach in that crisis moment. So then how do you recognize your negative self-talk? William Backhouse, in his book, Telling Yourself the Truth, he has this concept of the self-talk triad. And it's basically 3 levels of self-talk that will make someone spiral and feel hopeless. So the first level is the person devalues themselves. So the example could be, man, I'm stupid. The second level is they devalue their current circumstance. So that could sound something like, yeah, I'm stupid. Lately life has been a drag and nothing is worth doing. I don't know why I get out of bed. And then the third one is the kicker, right? Because as the lies, they get you to believe that your identity is, they get to believe a lie about your identity. Then they get to believe a lie about your current circumstance. And then it gets you to believe that there is no hope. And once a person has no hope, then that's when conditions like depression can creep in. So, for example, that could sound like in this scenario, oh, you'll never make it, you'll never be anything, everyone else is doing okay, but that won't be you. You won't get what you want. Life is hopeless. And that's when your self-talk can really spiral. But the truth is, in that example, actually no one can predict the future with certainty. Least of all someone who is being affected by the pain and hurt of depression, or if they're viewing the world through their lens of being affected by their emotions. And also, envy isn't realistic. It doesn't have all the facts. The words I'm miserable and someone else is the happy one is untrue, because everyone has unhappiness in their life somewhere or sometime, and everyone has difficulties to face and problems to solve. This self-talk triad I found as well, maybe you're not at a place where that third level where you devalue your future prospects, but it can also resolve you to protect your UBF if that's how your self-talk follows that kind of chain. So for example, personally, there was one time where Jerry asked me to make sausages and I hadn't cooked them on the pan before, and just FYI, Jerry does all the cooking in our house. I don't cook. And I don't really know how to. The most I've made for Jerry is I've made one meal and then 2-minute noodles, and I've made him sandwiches. Oh, and cereal, yeah. Thanks. Anyway, so he asked me to cook the sausages in the pan, which I hadn't done before. And I hadn't put enough oil in there, and the heat setting wasn't quite right. So then Jerry came over, and then he's like, oh, he pointed those things out to me. And then I started crying. So what was my self-talk? The first one was, I devalue myself. I'm stupid. I should have known that. Why didn't I know that? I'm stupid. And then I devalued my current circumstance. I can't even make sausages.
I'll never learn how to make that.
Well, and that third level for me was then I resolved to protect my UVF. And I told myself, see, this is why I shouldn't try cooking, because I'll mess it up and waste food. So the underlying lie I believed was that failure is fatal. And I didn't catch myself when I started having those thoughts. So I started spiraling and then I cried. And that was like even before, I hadn't even messed up the sausages yet. They were fine. But I was like, no, I can't do it. So see how your self-talk can entrap you and render you powerless? So that's another example. I'm going to talk about one more example because self-talk can cover like a whole range of different scenarios and different emotions and UBFs. But I did want to talk about what our self-talk is like in our interactions with other people. So here's a scenario. How do you interpret when someone promises to do something but doesn't do it? So the scenario is based on the fact that it's not a repeated pattern of behavior. But basically, they've promised to do something really important and then fall through. So what self-talk do you relate to more? The first one, I told them how important this was to me and they just forgot to do it. Clearly, they don't care enough about me, because if they did, they would have remembered. I'm always thought about last. Or is your self-talk more like this? Well, that's really annoying, but I wonder why they forgot. I know they're normally really onto it and they care about me. Maybe something came up for them. I'll ask them about it. You can see how they're very different, right? So here are some last thoughts that I have about how to recognize your negative self-talk, and then I'll go into how do we change our self-talk. So if we struggle with obligation, look out for when you tell yourself something like, I have to do this, or I have to do that, I should do that. Ask yourself, do I really have to do that? What would be the consequence of not doing that? Is the consequence someone else's responsibility? And just a word of caution as well, be careful when you start finding yourself using the words always or never to describe yourself or other people. You're either putting them or yourself in a box or putting them or yourself on a pedestal, and both will lead to disappointment. And then also how to recognize negative self-talk is you're not telling yourself the truth if you feel powerless or fear. Your self-talk positive self-talk based on truth should always encourage you. So how do we change our self-talk? Well, recognizing what your self-talk is a really good first step, because that will uncover whether you believe any lies or misbeliefs. And then this is where earlier I said targeting your misbelief or targeting your self-talk. This is where targeting your misbelief and telling self-truth coaches comes into play, like having both of them, right? Because when you're not in a crisis situation, when your bruises aren't getting pressed on, this is when, like, if you tell yourself the truth coaches, it will be easier for you to have truthful self-talk, right? Because you become what you think. The Bible tells us in Philippians chapter 4, verse 8, brothers and sisters, whatever is true, whatever is noble, whatever is right, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely, whatever is admirable, if anything is excellent or praiseworthy, think about such things. So don't be discouraged when your self-talk doesn't change immediately, because this is a process. Your self-talk comes from the lie and the misbelief, and that needs to change as well. But some things that I have found helpful, first of all, is like ask God to be a part of this journey. Our healing, changing, renewing our mind is not based on our own effort, right? It's God coming alongside us and helping us. Just as like our whole like Christian walk is about, like the thing is we can't do this ourselves. God has to be a part of it. So seek God, ask God, invite him into the process would be my first thing. And then I found also the journaling process is really helpful, and that involves sitting with your emotions. Helen's talked about this a couple of times, in that, like we can't just bypass how we're feeling and too solutions minded and be like, okay, get to the next step, next step, next step. Why do I still feel this way kind of thing? When you're feeling a big emotion, allow your self-talk to be, okay, I'm feeling XYZ. It's not pleasant, but I will be okay. Let me just feel this for a bit, and then later I can work out why I'm feeling it. Another thing I found really helpful is like question the thoughts that come into your mind. So when your mind throws up a thought, be curious about it. Question yourself. For example, if the thought is, why am I so stupid? Then ask yourself, why do I just assume it's because I'm stupid that something goes wrong? And this kind of process, like questioning yourself, questioning the thoughts that come up, is also very biblical. In 2 Corinthians chapter 10, verse 5, it says, we demolish arguments and every pretension that sets itself up against the knowledge of God, and we take captive every thought to make it obedient to Christ. So the truth is that we can have power over our self-talk. William Backhouse says, pursuing peace means to choose it. You will never have peace if you are putting yourself down. And the peaceful person is the one who is at peace with himself. When you like yourself, you'll be free to like and appreciate others. But when you're hard on yourself, you'll also be hard on others. So I'll finish with this truth coach before I put some discussion stuff in the group chat. Praise and encouragement is much more effective in changing others' behavior than is criticism. But which do you use on yourself? Cool. Any questions?
That's amazing. I'm still working because, I've just done Living Wisdom and I'm still applying this. You mentioned what the king lie was with the sausages. What was the UB? It's always everyday situations, but it is, yeah. What was the UBS though, if you might?
So I guess my unbearable feeling was like I couldn't stand failure.
Right, yeah. Sure.
Yeah, failure was the feeling I was trying to avoid.
And so it's just like, we can all relate to that. Because I'm still like, sometimes I get stuck on finding the deepest basement thing, Yeah. Well, but you're trying to avoid feeling. So then trying to find it is like the thing you don't want to find.
Yeah.
So, yeah.